Today, we're going to be talking about something that has confused me for a long time, the federal funds rate. I watch CNBC a lot, and they're constantly debating, is the Fed going to raise rates? Are they going to cut them or hold them? So I figure it's time for me to actually understand it and to explain to you what the Fed funds rate actually is, how changing it hits regular people, why it sends shockwaves through the stock market, and the real debate happening inside the Fed right now. So let's get into it. What the federal funds rate actually is. The federal funds rate is the interest rate that banks charge each other to borrow money overnight. Banks have to hold a certain amount of money in their reserves. Think of it like their safety cushion. Some days they end with extra, some days they're short. So they lend to each other to balance everything out. And the interest rate they use is the federal funds rate. The Fed doesn't directly set this rate. They can't just flip a switch. What actually happens is the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, sets a target range, like saying, keep this rate between here and here. They use open market operations to guide it. When the Fed wants lower rates, they buy U.S. government securities. That pumps money into the banking system. Banks suddenly have more cash, so they usually lend cheaper. When the Fed wants higher rates, they sell securities. That pulls money out of the system. Cash tightens and banks charge more. They literally control the flow of money. Now, obviously, the U.S. economy is more complicated than just borrowing, but credit conditions are one of the biggest drivers of growth. How this rate affects your life. The federal funds rate sets the price of money in the entire economy. If this rate is low, banks borrow cheap. And when banks borrow cheap, they usually lend cheap. If this rate is high, banks pay more to borrow, and they pass that cost down to everyone else. Even though not everyone feels it equally, everyone eventually gets hit. Borrowing costs move instantly. When the Fed raises rates, mortgages jump, car payments go up, credit card interest explodes, and businesses stop taking loans. When they do the opposite, payments drop, refinancing makes sense, businesses invest more, spending increases, banks are more willing to give out loans. Housing gets rocked. Housing reacts faster than almost anything else. A 1% jump in your mortgage rate can change your monthly payment by hundreds of dollars a month for your typical mortgage. When rates rise, fewer people qualify, demand falls, price cools, and the market slows. When rates are cut, demand surges, affordability improves, price often rises. Jobs and wages change too. Now this is the part that surprises most people. High rates make it expensive for companies to borrow and expand, so they freeze hiring, slow wage growth, delay projects, sometimes do layoffs. With low rates, companies start hiring again, new projects begin, wages pick up. The federal funds rate literally shapes the job market you walk into. You oftentimes see massive cuts when the Fed raises rates by a substantial amount over time. Savings gets better or worse. When rates are high, low-risk investments like savings accounts, CDs, or treasury yields all pay more. When rates are low, savings earn almost nothing, people take on more risk, stock market surges. This is good for savers when rates rise, but it's tough for borrowers. Now let's start thinking about the stock market, because it reacts instantly, or even before the Fed moves. Stock prices move on expectations. When the Fed hikes rates, borrowing costs rise, profits drop, growth slows, future earnings are worth less. When they cut rates, growth gets easier, profits rise, people take on more risk, stock prices jump. Tech stocks are the most sensitive. They move hard on Fed days. Here's the part that almost everyone misses. When rates rise, the discount rate rises. That's the number investors use to calculate what future profits are worth today. Higher discount rate leads to future money being worth less and stocks falling. And because growth tech companies make most of their money in the future, they get hit the hardest on these hike cycles. Low rates lead to discount rate falling, future earnings looking more valuable, and stock prices rising. Bond yields and shifts in the capital market. Rate hikes lead to bond yields rising, investors pulling money out of the stock market and putting it into bonds. Rate cuts lead to yields dropping and money flowing back into stocks. This constant movement creates massive swings in the market. Companies react overnight. High rates lead to companies slowing hiring, stop expansion, and delaying projects. Low rates equals businesses invest more, hire aggressively, launch new products, take more risks. Companies breathe in sync with the Fed, especially businesses that rely on borrowing. Inflation response. High rates lead to slow spending, inflation cools. Low rates stimulate spending and rise inflation. The Fed uses this rate like a gas pedal. It's not a perfect tool, but it is their strongest one. The Fed is in a real-time debate right now. They operate under the dual mandate, price stability and maximum sustainable employment. The Fed's target for stable inflation is 2%, because 2% keeps prices stable without choking economic growth. Inflation has stayed above that, and this is where the internal fight begins. Team 1, the Doves, the employment protectors. The labor market is weakening, unemployment is worse than slightly above target inflation. They want to cut rates sooner to protect jobs. And then Team 2, the Hawks. We're not at 2% yet. High inflation is more dangerous in the long term. They're willing to keep rates high even if it slows the economy. This is the debate driving everything you see in the markets right now. So yeah, that one rate you hear on the news isn't just random. It's literally the price of money. It affects your mortgage, your job, your car payment, the stock market, corporate profits, literally everything. It is the first domino. And every time the Fed moves it, the entire economy shifts with it.